Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith. Welcome to the Grow Tent, everybody. You have found the best growing channel on YouTube, man. The place where we simplify the approach for you so everyone can learn how to grow. We make it so simple, even I can understand. So I'm going to listen and learn right now.
Woo! What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Grow Tent. Man, messed up my own intro. We're gonna keep it though. Guys, if you haven't yet joined the Patreon, once again, YouTube does not support Canna content creators. So if you're looking for a way to support the channel, if you learn anything like that, please feel free to join our Patreon. It's a way we can actually pay the bills with making Canna content. Also, guys, if you're looking for any kind of new light, new tint, anything of the sort, make sure you check out Mars Hydro. They're the main sponsor of the channel. They have been since we've only had 500 subscribers. We got way more than that now. Also, if you want to use the code WTTGT at discount, we'll give you an extra at checkout. We'll give you an extra discount at checkout. I'm not with it today. Guys, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, watch the full video. All that kind of stuff helps out the channel, especially since we are a Canna content channel. They don't like to push us in the algorithm, any of that stuff. So all those likes and comments and stuff, they all help. All right, let's get to the episode right now. Woo! What's going on? What is going on? Guys, we got a cool episode for you today. We had a question from one of our Patreons, and he was saying, what is the stretch? I always hear you talk about the stretch. What are you talking about when you're talking about the stretch? And I was like, well, we could probably do an episode on it, or I could sit here and type out a page and a half on Patreon. So I was just like, well, we'll just make a video where I can just talk about it. So whenever you hear the term the stretch, the growers that are talking about it, or the people that you hear talking about, they're talking about a particular time frame in the plant's life. It's very important. It's probably one of the most important times in the plant's life. I mean, they're all important, but the stretch is probably one of the most important parts of the plant's life, because what you do during it will depend on the outcome of your grow. So the time period, whenever somebody says the stretch, is weeks 1 through 3 of flower. So weeks 1 through 3, as soon as you flip if you have a photo period, as soon as you flip your lights to 12-12, the next 3 weeks are what we call the stretch. If you have an auto flower, whenever it transitions itself, so it's not under your control, but under its control, whenever it transitions itself from veg to flower, it'll do that all by itself since it's an auto flower. That is whenever it goes into the stretch, and that could be any time after 3 weeks or after 6 weeks. Autoflowers, they're just a little bit different, so they act on their own. So anytime in between, week 3 and week 5, week 6, it'll flip itself into flower. Generally, it's like week 3 or week 4. It'll flip itself into flower. So whenever the plant is transitioning itself out of veg and into flower, those first 3 weeks are called the stretch. And this is generally where we'll see the most explosive, I know people like to use that word, explosive growth from your plant, which in this part of the plant is actually true. You'll every day you walk in, new growth, new growth, new growth. And the plants generally will double in size. So if you've got a plant that's this big, at the end of the 3 weeks, it'll be this big. Or if you got a plant that's this big, at the end of 3 weeks, it'll be this big, okay? So generally they double in size. They can do more than that, or they could do a little bit under it. But generally, a good rule of thumb is whatever your plant is, the size, they will double in size. That's one of the reasons we say you're done vegging whenever you've covered half of your floor. So if you've got a 2x4 and you're covering half of it, 2x2, you are done with veg. Because whenever you put them into flower, they're going to double in size. If you were at 50% and they double in size, now you're covering 100% of your floor. It's one of the reasons we say you only veg till half your floor is covered. Because if you veg over, let's say you covered 60% of your floor and they double in size, now you're at 120% of your floor. You don't have 120%. So when you run out of room to go sideways, the only way they have to go is up and into the light, and then you burn off all your terpenes and your smells and all that good stuff. So that's why we only veg to 50%. So the stretch, what you'll notice is the first week they don't do a ton. So the very first week they're in a transition week. They're transitioning away from veg and into flower. So that first week you don't see too much happen. It's just meh. It's just one of those boring transition weeks where nothing a lot going on. Towards the end of the week, you will start to see them shoot up and grow. The main weeks of the stretch are really week 2 and week 3. Let's see what else we got going on. The stretch is also your last chance that you will have for training. So during the stretch, you're done with all types of high stress training. Once you flipped into flower, the only kind of training you'll be allowed to do or able to do is low stress training. We're done with things like topping and super cropping and fimming. All those high stress methods of training are over as soon as we get into flower. So a couple versions of training you still would have left is low stress training, where you tie it down with a bunch of wire ties. Silliness whenever you got a plant that's really big. You're going to have 30 wire ties going around your plant. It's silly. So your best bet then is a scrog net. They work really well. Or you can use like those little clips people make, where it's kind of like super cropping, but it's not. You just kind of put it on the plant and then you bend the branch through it to keep it flared over. Those work really well. People do all kinds of 3D printed versions of that stuff. But the stretch is really your last chance for training, because after the stretch, you're done training of any sort. There's no more training, because then we're transitioning. Week 4 is a transition phase, and then weeks 5, 6, and 7 are all bulking. And we don't train during those phases. So it's really your last chance to do any kind of training is in the stretch. And it's also your last chance for CalMag, because after week 3 of the stretch is over, we are done with the CalMag because we no longer need the calcium part, and we're going to be moving over to like a mag sulfur, like a Botanicare Sweet, a Flora Nectar, Bud Candy, any of those other ones. You'll be moving over into that realm. So weeks 1, 2, and 3 of flower, your last chance is to give the CalMag, because we're done after week 3 because we don't need the CalMag anymore. What else we got? Let's talk about, we kind of started to talk about the nutri requirement. So the supplement part would be the CalMag. What kind of nutrients would you be looking to if you were feeding during the stretch? Nitrogen still plays a huge role. Everybody's like, oh, but we're in flower. We're not going to be doing nitrogen anymore. It's untrue. You will still be using nitrogen in the first few weeks of flower. After week 4 is pretty much where we tend to tail off. If I'm going to end up doing a feeding in week 4, usually I'll do something like 2 milliliters per gallon still of nitrogen, just so I don't induce a fade. Because I found that if I don't add that touch of nitrogen, if I'm going into week 4, like if I cut the nitrogen off, like a lot of places will tell you, if I cut that nitrogen off, what I'll see is a lot of times whenever I get into week 6 flower, I'll start getting all these little yellow spots all over my leaves, and it is, oh, hold on, we got a call coming in. Decline. All right, but I'll start the leaves will actually start to fade yellow on week 6, and I don't like them fading that early into week 6. It's okay if they do into week 5 or beginning of week 6, but I would rather them wait till the end of week 6 before that fade comes in. And I found if I had that 2 milliliters per gallon of nitrogen on that, let's say week 3, week 4 feeding, I can just push that off to the right amount of time if I don't cut it off at week 3, and I just give them that little bit of extra, in like week 3, week 4 time period. But other than that, your nutrients you can follow right along with whatever nutrient line you're using, and you'll be just fine. But generally, you're still going to be doing nitrogen, and then your amounts are pretty much even. Like if in veg, your nitrogen's way up and your P and K are pretty low. And then once we get into the transition into flower, or actually into flower into the stretch, you'll notice they kind of balance out to where everything's pretty much even. Like if I was going to feed, I wouldn't, but if I was going to feed at like week 1 of flower, like I didn't transplant them, then you will notice like your N, your P, and your K will all be even. I give like 5 milliliters of each, and they'll all be exactly even when they go in. But then as flower goes on, you'll notice our nitrogen goes down and then completely off, but our potassium and our phosphorus, they go up as we get towards flower, because those are what the plant wants at the time. They don't need the nitrogen anymore really after week 3. I do give them that touch, like I'm talking about, just to keep the fade off, that extra week to get the fade just when I want. But I don't really know what else we could talk about with the stretch, but I just figured, it was easier to just say all that over 10 minutes rather than try to type it all out. So, because I get quite a few questions on the stretch. A lot of people don't understand when it is, what is happening, and how important it is, because controlling your canopy during the stretch, I've got a bunch of videos on it, is one of the most important parts of your grow. And it's actually the only time I tell you to go into your grow and mess with your plants every day during that time period. You're going to be adjusting those plants in the scrog net every single day, weeks 2 and week 3 of flower, because it is that important. Generally, I tell you, you go in and you train your plants one time a week. That's all you got to do. Just touch them one time a week, whether it's watering and all that other stuff. Just go in one time a week and you'll be fine. But for training and super cropping, just put your hands on them once a week, and that's fine, but not during the stretch. During the stretch, it is extremely important that you control the canopy, because if you don't, these plants grow so fast during week 2 and week 3, not really week 1, because once again, we said it's a transition week, but these plants grow so fast during week 2 and week 3 of flower, they'll put 3 to 4 inches every single day. They'll grow about 3 to 4 inches. They can grow, well, at least mine do. And they'll keep growing, and they'll keep growing, they keep growing. So if you don't mess them for 3 or 4 days, they could have, 3, 6, 9, they could get 9 inches tall, and then you've got plants that have run up towards your light. And since we're growing in a tent and not in a big warehouse like giant cultivation facilities do, that spacing is really, really important to us, and we don't want to have the plants run up into the light. It's bad. Because if you ever looked at a cultivation facility, the lights are on the ceiling. They're not 2 foot away or a foot away or anything like that. They're on ceiling. They're 20 foot away. They're way up in the sky, okay? And the plants are way down here. So we're growing in a tent. Our space is extremely important, our light spacing, whenever we're trying to keep them away and keep it down, all right? So don't listen to all that stuff in the manuals that say, oh, yeah, 18 inches away in flower, that's where they need to be. No, you look at any major cultivation facility, those lights are on the ceiling. All right, we're getting off topic, though. Guys, I hope you learned something. For the people that had the questions about the stretch, I hope this answered them. And I'll see you guys next week. If you have any other questions, you always get hold of me on Patreon, and I answer those questions. I try to. I was pretty sick last week with COVID. Finally feeling better. Not sweating, just sitting here, so that's good. And I try to get to them at least once a day. And I'll see you guys next time. GT, out.